Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Eric, and today we are going to be covering mobility and flexibility. I already covered it a little bit in my last video, basic exercise knowledge, but we're going to be covering it way more in depth today because I'm going to be going over my personal and professional experiences with mobility and flexibility. It is very important to understand the differences and to understand how you can overdo and underdo it, but that's what we're going to be covering, and the benefits of doing it well. So understretch, overstretch, and the benefits of doing it right. So first I'll just do a recap on what we talked about before. So mobility is really, oh, where's my marker? I want to write it down. This is my third take. The first time I just wasn't set up right. Second time I screwed up by saying a bunch of stuff that I just didn't feel right saying. And third time I just didn't like the takes, so that's the fun part about doing it raw. Oh, and you get to see the squirrels, so I made sure that it was pointed towards them and the river. I've also got my little labial mic in case this audio doesn't turn out and you guys don't like the audio in the last videos. I'm not redoing those videos, so to recap, mobility is to have range of motion in your joints or in one or multiple joints. So really, it's also your muscles having that ability to do the reach as well. Then, flexibility is the muscle's ability to bend without snapping, breaking, having that tightness, being forcefully pushed into, but having a more fluid feeling of stretching. And it's funny because if you go into Google and you type in these definitions, so if you go into Google and type just flexibility, it will tell you what is flexibility. Flexibility is the ability of a joint or series of joints to move through an unrestricted, pain-free range of motion. That's mobility. That's mobility. When we're talking about the joints, that is mobility. And then if you type in mobility, it doesn't give you a definition, but you can go down, and it says under the people also ask, what is the meaning of mobility? The ability to move freely, which, yeah, that's true. Mobility is the ability to move freely, so that's not false, that is true, but then when you type in mobility versus flexibility, then it gives you the right description of flexibility. While mobility refers to the body's ability to move through its full range of motion, flexibility is the ability to stretch. So, like I said, the ability to do a stretch and hold it and feel a relief of tension-built trauma. So, here, I'll write this down. So, mobility is the range of motion, so ROM, in one or I'm gonna mess up, to pull joints. And then flexibility is the muscles' ability to stretch comfortably. So as per usual, I'm sorry my writing sucks, but sorry. Yeah, so it's interesting that Google does that, where their definitions are not quite accurate, I would say. But it's not the most accurate. I wish it was more accurate, but you can't just rely on these sources to always be accurate. That's when you got to have your skepticism hat on and think and so mobility and flexibility, and you can have mobility without flexibility and vice versa. So you can have the ability to move your arm around the joint region without having flexibility, but you can also have flexibility without mobility. So you can have the ability to have flexible muscles but then lack mobility. But I also think that's partially false, because you might have mobility in your arm to allow for the stretch, but then you just lack the mobility to reach a little bit further. So that fluidity action, so the dynamic stretching, would probably be more necessary to become better at flexibility. So I kind of think that in order to gain flexibility, you have to build your mobility, and to gain mobility, you have to gain flexibility. So it's a bridge. It's a bridge. But then I'm going to add that in order to have good mobility, flexibility, you also have to have good strength. So it's not just a 2D situation, it's a 3D situation, and plus rest. But I mean, that's in the center. So mobility, flexibility, and strength. If you try and build up mobility without flexibility, you're going to get issues. But if you try and build up mobility and flexibility without strength, that can cause another form of issues, and that might actually go under more of the overstretch. So now let's say that you are doing more strength training. That would actually go more into understretch, because of the fact that you're training, you're making your muscles stronger, they're pulling more, and well, that can then cause a problem of pulling muscles and like straining muscles. You might have pulled your neck back. Chest is a weird one. Abs, might have pulled your abs, but then it could also become worse, where you can then herniate your spine or your core. I think that, where the bulging disc pops out and affects the core, and you're not supposed to push it back in. You have to be really careful with that kind of stuff, because when you don't stretch and the muscle is pulling more, then that means that you could either slip the disc or bulge the disc. You got to be really careful with your balance. So you can definitely have mobility without flexibility, but then you could also, without the strengthening factor, that's part of the reason why I'm posting this video before the next one that I'm going to post, training for health, fitness, and performance. That is supposed to come first in my curriculum, but because I posted the videos on my YouTube channel a long time ago, I need to cover this as soon as possible so that you understand that you can do too much of a good thing. So flexibility, mobility, and then not enough strength. You need strength in order to balance those factors out. Okay, so I've rambled on enough about that. I'm now going into understretching. So understretching really just means to not stretch enough, to need it, and then maybe you become stiff and mobile. So actually here, I'll go based off of my whiteboard that I am going to post. I'm going to post this because you might not want to watch me ramble, and so that's fine. The views are nice, but if you just want the page is there. You can read it, or you can read it with me. Understretching is not stretching or holding your muscles into a point of releasing trauma-built tension or relief. So not stretching your muscles enough to counter the effects of using your muscles through daily living or activities of daily living. So that's not something I don't think I've talked about yet. Activities of daily living, or ADLs, are things that we do throughout our day that cause trauma to our muscles. Or maybe you're sitting all day, but sitting and doing this all day is technically still trauma, and you do need to reverse the effects of that by standing, walking, moving, doing some exercise to counter the crunch forward motion. Like, we all sit like shrimps when we're at our desk, so I mean, we got to counter that. We got to bring our back. We got to focus on other core exercises. We got to make sure that we balance that idea out. Where was I? Oh, most people do not know how to stretch all of the muscles, which is very true. There's a lot of muscles and a lot of stretches, so that's why I have them posted, but they're not all there. That I might have to update that video at some point, or maybe just add them in. I'm not too sure how I would do that, but it will be in the future. There's just a few extra stretches. They're not big ones, but I'll focus on those in the future. Or how often they should stretch for what they do or don't do. It really does depend on you, your unique circumstances, and what you need the most, what you don't need as much of. Right now, I'm definitely in that circumstance, but it's also a mind-body connection, so feeling what you need is a very important thing to know and experience. If you've never experienced it before, that's why you might need a professional to help you with that. But you also have to be very careful on the professional that you get, because, well, personal trainers, for example, are salespeople on the side, so they're thinking more about, hey, how do I get this person, rather than how are you today? That's why you got to be very skeptical about the professional that you get. So do your research and make sure that you are in the know of what we're talking about. That's why, again, I'm releasing these videos for free, because I think that it's important for everyone to understand these topics. So symptoms of understretching your muscles can include, I might write this. Yeah, where's my blue? So, region-specific or overall joint muscle tenderness. So I'm just going to write joint muscle tenderness. Joint muscle tenderness. It's pretty messy. That's why I'm posting these. So they'll be in the description if you want a copy. Stiffness and discomfort. Discomfort. And tightness-related impingement due to the usage of your musculoskeletal system in your specific ADLs, so activities of daily living, plus time. So over time, it may get worse. The tightness, stiffness will get worse, and the only way to really release that tenderness is to stretch. Okay, so region-specific or overall joint muscle immobility. So just not having that fluidity in your joints to be able to have range of motion. So, I said immobility. Limited range of motion, so limited range of motion. Minimal and lack of functional ability, so lack of conditioning, so lack of functional ability. So, or yeah, just your conditioning level. When you don't practice it, that is essentially your ability or your conditioning. For the people who don't do it, they will have a lack of. For the people who do it, they will have more of, but there's also overdoing, which we'll get into that in a minute. And then impingement-related injuries, especially when exercising through pains, problem movements. So, I'll write that. Impingement. And pains in movements. So it doesn't even just have to be like a, oh god, this hurts a lot kind of pain. It could just be tenderness. It could just be, oh yeah, a little ache here, or a little problem here, but that can get worse if you keep pushing through. That is, again, another factor of time. So all these points are time-related. If you don't do anything about it and it gets worse, that's usually what will make it worse, the fact that you're not doing it. So understretching is something that I did at the very beginning. I had a lot of pulls, pains, problems. I had tendonitis. That is usually what one of the causes of tendonitis can be, but there are multiple causes, like overtraining, not training specific things, so having a muscle imbalance. And we'll get in that in the future. But now we're going to talk about overstretching. I think I touched on all of understretching. Time is sort of a thing here too, but the problem with overstretching, well, here, I'll just read it from the page. Overstretching, sometimes turning into hypermobilization, that's what I currently have, of whole musculatures, joint regions, or even your entire body. What happened to me, my whole body. I hope that was okay on the mic. I might try and use this mic audio, but you never know. Is when you have stretched your muscles too much, whether it be too often or over a short period of time, or less often over an extended period of time, but not having enough exercise, movement-related training to counter overstretching. So what I mean by that is that you're just not doing the strength training, like I said before, you need to have that pillar, so the 3 bases plus rest, in order to actually accomplish a balanced goal. But if you only have 1 or 2 of those pillars, well, you're going to be off balance. You're going to hurt yourself. And so not having a balance of those movements is extremely important to counter the effects of overstretching. So that I'm mostly just talking about doing only mobility and flexibility without the strength aspect. And I've seen that before. It's more common in women because of things like yoga. Women love yoga. They love being flexible. Well, you might hear about all the women who want to work the booty, get the big butt and all that stuff. Yeah, okay. The problem is if you only work one muscle group, you will cause a problem. That will cause a muscle imbalance. You will have hip pain, back pain, you might slip a disc. You actually probably definitely will slip a disc because you're only training the glutes, maybe the hip flexors, maybe the core too, but then you're not quite thinking about, if you work the glutes, you might also work the quadriceps, but only specific portions of it, not quite the hamstrings. You might miss the shins and the calves. You might miss the lower back. You might miss all sorts of different muscles. It really is just dependent on each individual's unique circumstances. So blah blah blah. When you have overstretched muscles, hypermobile joints, symptoms can include, and this is where I should probably get my red marker, because this actually can become, I think, you know what, I can't say more problematic. They're both on a spectrum. They can both be just as bad, just in different ways. So, joint muscle weakness. So this one is important because if you stretch too much, you will become weaker. Your muscles won't be able to actually stabilize that joint region or the bones or any part of you properly, and that's where uncertainty comes in. We'll get to that in a second. Joint muscle weakness. So while you might understretch and do a lot of strength training, you would actually gain strength, and that impingement, like tendinitis, that you still have strength, but then the problem is you get pain, and then you have to stop. But if you work through that pain, you can tear tendons, muscles, you can hurt yourself in different ways, like bulging discs, slipping discs. It just becomes more of a problem. I've never seen bruising before the problem happens, but then again, the bruising also only happens after it's too late with overstretching. Overstretching. So weakness, tablet turned off, fantastic. Gotta love technology. I guess I do have it on a timer, so. Hello. So joint muscle weakness, inability to gain strength. So just no strength. And you might also lose strength. So if you currently have strength, you probably will lose it. Because if you're overstretching, doing too much, what happens is, I think I say it best here. No, I say it at the end, but let's say you're overstretching your arms. So you're doing the tricep and bicep stretch, so the one where you turn your thumb upside down and use a wall to stretch. What will then happen is you have your radius and ulna bone. I think, that's in the top. What will happen is they will not be able to stabilize properly, because that's what the muscles do. They hold the bones together and the joint region nice and stable. They hold it to be stable. But when the muscles can't stabilize, they can't be strong or be able to hold them together properly, they'll collapse in on each other. And basically causing the nerve in your muscle to not glide through the muscles properly. That's usually what causes the pain and the uncertainty, which is interesting because when I had it, I just did way too much stretching with my clients on my own, and I really didn't know how to slide. It felt good. And I had a goal. I wanted to try and do the splits because I was like, why not? I think I could do it. I actually hypermobilized, like I said, I hypermobilized my whole body it was a big problem. It took a really long time to recover from. I'm still technically recovering from it, just because my strength is building up, but I can't build my strength too quickly. Otherwise, I will feel uncertain pain. Like tightness, aches, I can't sit for too long, I'm moving around a lot. I think I have a video in my flexibility mobility playlist about that. It's not pleasant. It's a very unpleasant feeling, and it gave me a form of anxiety that you can only really experience when you do too much of that, because you gain the anxiety of movement, like you're just afraid to move. Okay, so so things collapse in on each other. The blood vessels aren't able to get that proper circulation, so it just causes localized bruising, and it causes you're not able to reach. So for me, it happened, like I said, all over my body. It happened in my biceps, it happened in my legs, it happened in my back. Thankfully, it didn't happen in my chest or my abs, but it happened everywhere. In my calf, I think, too. Yeah, it was in my calf. So basically, I just couldn't move. I had to stay still for a very long time, like 3 months. I could not use my hands, my grip very well. Driving wasn't exactly possible for about a month until I was able to get some straps for my hand where I can then hold on, because the strap basically helped to stabilize my wrists. Doing dishes was hard. So basically lots and lots of anxiety in that kind of regard. Don't recommend. I definitely don't recommend. You get joint muscle weakness and ability to gain strength. So if you do have strength and you do try to lift heavy, there's a higher risk of injury when you're trying to lift heavier, especially if you have an existing muscle imbalance. So with a muscle imbalance, that actually makes the situation worse. So I had my muscle, or my hypermobility and overstretch injury in 2022, and it took 3 months to really recover. It took about 6 months, though, to be less anxious. I was still working with clients after that 6-month period. And basically, I felt good after it, but I still had muscle imbalances. And something I didn't realize when I did my exercises was I didn't think, my hypermobility is still there, or my overstretch is still there. So I kept exercising, not heavy, but I was able to push myself a little bit more. I was able to increase the intensity, and what I didn't think about was the fact that my lower chest has always been a little bit bigger than my upper chest. And I've always been complimented on that. I'm a little upset, actually, because of the fact that they were compliments and not criticisms. I would have preferred someone say, "Hey, Eric, you got some imbalances going on there." But anyways, basically what happened was I strained my neck, and I actually felt the clicking of my spine up in the C1, C2, C3 disc area, and I knew that if I did anything more in the forward, so it had everything to do with the bench press and the dip, all the downward pushing movement, and I couldn't even have my shoulders roll forward. Well, I couldn't do anything. I could even feel it in my ear. It was terrifying. I had to do more rest. That was a quicker thing to recover from. I don't consider it an injury. It was just a strain. I guess it is an injury, but it was terrifying because of the fact that if I were to slip this, I would lose all of my functional ability whatsoever. I'd be disabled. So that's why muscle balance is extremely important while you're doing anything or everything. Strength, flexibility, mobility, because then if you have one of these issues, your muscular balance is also going to dictate what kind of, or how you're, what kind of injury you have and how bad it is, and where it is, what kind of strains you might have. Anyways, on to the next point. So muscle imbalances. That's a topic we're going to be getting into more in the future. Okay, so feeling of uncertainty in specific multiple muscles and or joint regions. So specific to amount of overstretch hypermobility per individual, the reasoning, so what was done too much or what wasn't done enough. So if you do specific stretches, more often than not, you'll definitely have more overstretch in that regard, and then maybe other stretches will feel better, but then that just means you have to avoid it. Avoidance is the best key. You really shouldn't do too much, and you should be doing what you need to do based off of how much of what you're doing. That's what I'm going to try my best to help you understand in my intermediate program videos, so not in the near future, but I think it's August. I think it's August that I'm starting that. But depending on how successful these videos are, who knows? Who knows? Okay, so yeah, feeling of uncertainty, localized bruising, so I've already talked about that, associated with pain, uneasiness of specific muscular associated reaches, stretching movements, and may also include pain while using the whole limb joint region. So yeah, usually if you get the bruising, then if it's here, I call it nerve bruising, then you're going to have pain down the rest of the extremity. So you'll just have pain. It's not the same kind of pain as this kind of pain. It's completely different. It's like you know that if you do something, you're going to hurt yourself further. Or it could also just be you just can't. It's your nerve being impacted. So that feeling of touch, it's not gone, but it's not good. It's not a good feeling. Maybe I'll try my best to figure out a better way to explain it. But again, that's uncertainty. that is uncertainty. Okay, so I've covered understretch and overstretch. I didn't really write much here, but again, I'm going to post this, so I was more telling the story. So why it's important to understand the difference and who it can happen to and how. So I'm just going to read off of here because I said it really well here. With overstretching, bruising and pains or lack of functionality occurs when the overstretched muscle hypermobile joint can no longer properly stabilize the bones they're supporting. So I already said that. They start to collapse in on each other. And so the joint region will literally collapse on the structure that is lacking proper stability. The pain would be caused by the pressure of the bones pushing in on the muscle nerve area, and so the nerve cannot properly glide in between the squishy muscles, because your muscles should not be hard, they should be squishy. If you do not have squishy muscles, that means you are probably understretched. But if you have overly squishy muscles, like I kind of do right now, you are then overstretched. Also causing the feeling of weakness and uncertainty. The physical bruising would be caused by the pressure on blood vessels, causing improper circulation. So I already said that. So this could also include uncertain feeling of self. So that is literally the anxiety of movement. You just are not sure of yourself anymore. You can't move properly. You feel like every movement that you do is not going to feel good. And it's a bad feeling. That's why I'm posting this video now, and I really hope that no one else has felt this, because you can really overdo it. Yeah, anyways. Inability to grip, walk, and stabilize. So I already talked about that. I actually needed canes to walk too, just to walk and to hold on to those canes. The pressure felt okay, like in my palm, but to grip onto it wasn't a good feeling. And anxiety of movement. With understretching, so now we're going to go back into understretching, you can also get pains and bruising, as well as clicking muscle joints, immobility, inflexibility. So really, you're just stiff. However, it will likely be a different experience from this end of the spectrum. You might be doing a specific action too often without the balanced opposing movements. You might also just be doing everything too much. Balance is key. However, also knowing the disciplines of proper program planning and periodization will assist you in avoiding balance-related issues lifelong. So, I learned this in school. I learned program planning and periodization in school, but I did not learn the full spectrum of it. We were always told that continuing education would be our best friend, but I don't think that was a good answer. I don't think that they should have been teaching us like that. there is a specific thing that we should have been taught, and we were not taught it. And the worst part is, all certifications out there do not teach you the full spectrum. They are cash cows. All they do is they want to grab your money. They basically really do not teach you what you need to know. And so one of those things that I had to teach myself in order to become better, well, I think I just missed it, but resting, relaxing, taking it easy, not pushing myself too hard. In the gym, I was told, hey, you should relax, you should take a break. But other people weren't saying the same thing. And these people were certified with either better certifications or, yeah, anyways, getting out of that topic, I might actually talk about that in another video because the certification system is trash. We need to change that so that other people don't get hurt. So with understretching, different experience, you might also be doing a specific action too often without the balanced opposing movements. You might also just be doing everything too much, like I just said. Balance is key. However, also knowing the disciplines of proper... I already went over this. Repeat stuff. If you haven't already checked out Burnham, you really should. He's the first video in my... in the Internet and Technology Effect, Welcome to the Internet. He says a lot of fun stuff in it, like vulgar language, but I mean... so true. There's a reason why that video is going to stay at the front of that playlist for a very long time. So how long does it take to fix an understretch, a muscle tension or overstretch hypermobility related condition injury? I say here that I'll have articles for genetically or hereditarily related conditions. I have videos. They're in the flexibility mobility playlist on my YouTube channel. The comorbidities one is actually really good on the genetic aspect of things, but I actually think there's a functional aspect to it too, where if you're not doing strength training or you don't have enough muscle to support the joint regions, and you only have flexibility mobility, then that will also cause hypermobility. But I do know that there is a genetic capacity to it because there are things that I've seen people do that I personally wouldn't be able to do even if I practice. I wouldn't want to practice into that, and they do it easily. But the thing about doing easy movements that are easy to you, you can overdo it even more, and you can hurt yourself even more. That's not a good thing either, which is why usually when something is easy to you, you shouldn't do it as often. You should actually aim to work on something that you're not good at, so that that thing that you're good at becomes a little bit harder. Not super hard, but you don't want it unless it's your specialty. And if it's your specialty, that's great, that's fantastic. If you want to get better at it, you have to still consider those pillars that you need to strengthen in order to maintain it without hurting yourself in this capacity, because this can happen to anyone. And that's one of the benefits of doing it better or doing it right, is having that balance. If you have it right, if you're doing it right, and you have all your pillars, you won't hurt yourself. So it would depend on the spectrum of action or lack of, and the consequences or rewards for both considerations, and with the understanding of what happened and what disciplines you must relearn. So you may just need to learn them, but you might also need to relearn them because you might forget. I know for a fact that if I didn't have this written down, I'd forget. I had to write everything down in order to make sure that I remembered, so that I could relearn certain things and also teach them to other people so that, well, they could learn them. Because we are not taught these things in school. We are not taught these things on a daily living. Our employers do not care about our functional being, which is why we have to learn them and we have to take care of ourselves. Anyways, I think I'm done. I'll talk about my clients for a second. So I had 3 clients that I identified with hypermobility overstretch syndrome. 2 of which had them more naturally, or just because they did things like yoga more often, they like stretching a lot more. Back in the day, one of my clients did ask me, Eric, can you stretch too much? I didn't know anything that I know now, and I said, I don't think so. She had bruising in her wrist, and she went to her doctor, she went to a physiotherapist, she could never figure it out. And then one day I just said, stop doing everything. That's what fixed it. And I wish I knew what I knew then, or now then, but that definitely was her cure, was doing nothing. But also, once she got back into strength training, it had to be an easy integration. So yeah, there's that. There was another person that I can't quite remember too well, but then the one person who I identified that just probably did too much of, and probably wasn't genetically a factor. Maybe it was. So that's the problem. That's the uncertainty part, is I don't know if it was genetic, but she did too much stretching. She went to a doctor, and her doctor prescribed her anxiety pills because she had more of a spinal condition and spinal nerve zapping, I guess you could say. Yeah, so anxiety was the main thing that affected her. Maybe I shouldn't be saying genders, but I mean, I'm not saying names. Yeah, anxiety of movement and the zapping. If it's affecting the spine more, then the spine is literally your central nervous system, so or part of. It would cause really weird, intricate symptoms, and going to a doctor will probably prescribe you medication for it because they don't know that scope. Going to a physiotherapist, they might think it has something to do with something else. They might not think, oh, look, hypermobility or overstretch, because they might not have been taught that way, which is, again, a problem. We are not taught the full scope in our education. So some people are, some people are not. Some people have the experience, like me, to teach other people how to avoid. You might be calling me paranoid for making this video, but yeah, I'm a little paranoid of making a person hypermobile by not teaching them the full spectrum that they need. Anyways, ramble way too much, but I think this was all information that I needed to deliver since I have the mobility flexibility videos. If you are doing a lot of stretching, don't do too much, because I will be making exercise videos in the future to help to combat the hypermobility flexibility symptoms. Anyways, take care, have a good one, I will see you in the next video.